Welcome everyone to our monthly, or well, to this month, so you get a bonus, but monthly Lectora product support sessions. The whole point of these sessions is for our customers, anyone using Lectora or interested in Lectora, and give you an idea of tips and tricks, other related things. If there's any new feature updates, we can have a look at. If there's any common topics we've seen in the past month or so that we want to have a look at. We've had a few requests throughout sessions for a look at variables. So this whole session is going to be about variables in Lectora and how we use them as well. So we'll go from there. And at the end, we also show a little bit of another tool that we have, Microbuilder, just as a little quick sort of demo, and we'll allow people to have a bit of a look at that. I think we've shown that in a couple sessions. There's been some updates, so we want to give a bit of a taste of that at the end. Okay, so we'll jump in from here. Let me switch through. Yeah, okay, so variables in Lectora, let's get started. I'll jump in and out of my presentation and the actual Lectora page to show you some of the practical stuff as well. But just to get started, what we're going to look at roughly is what variables are in Lectora. So just an idea of how they work. There's variables in lots of other tools, but specifically how we use them in our Lectora projects, where to use them, how to use them, a couple more specific things of how to track values during a course, how to keep track of the variables themselves. So management, they can be a bit complicated if you don't use them properly, or if you're not sure how to use them. They can get a bit messy and scary, which is, I think, what turns some people off when they get in a bit of a pickle with them. But outside of that, also using conditions in Lectora and branching, that's obviously often based on variables in a way as well. So I wanted to have a look at that. And finally, how we can communicate data with your LMS, again, using variables there. So we'll get started. So just in general, what are variables? We've got a little bit of a picture there, but essentially we like to think of variables as jars or buckets, where we often say there's different analogies people use, but labeled jars is the sort of one I come back to, that hold different types of information. So it's somewhere you can store a piece of information and use it later or check it later, and you can also update it as you go through. Okay. So in general, in more specific terms, variables store data during your course runtime. So as a person is going through the course, the things they do, the things they click, different things that happen in Lectora are stored in different ways, and you can use that information throughout your course, whether it's basing it from interactions or if it's checking the score, that sort of thing as well. Variables can be changed based on things that just happen in Lectora, as well as specific user actions. And there are two main types, which we'll go through a little bit today. There are built-in variables that Lectora generates itself. They're either already in there or they are generated by certain types of objects that you add to Lectora. And there's also user-defined variables, which are the ones you create yourself for a specific purpose. Sometimes people create their own variables to achieve something that Lectora is already doing, using a variable for. So just pointing out some of those just to save you time if you're making one yourself that Lectora is already keeping track for you. We can go through some of those. Couple of different data types for variables as well, different things we use them for. Lectora variables are all just a single type of variable, but you can have different types of values within them. So you can use numbers for scores and counters, things like that. I'll show you when and how to use those. You can use text, so you can store letters, strings, things like names or typed answers within a variable, as well as common use is sort of using them as a flag or what they call in code, they call it a Boolean. So it's a choice between two options. So true or false, yes or no, on or off. You can use them that way, but the same variables can be used for all three of these within Lectora. Some tools will use a specific type of variable to be a true false version or a number version. Lectora can switch between the two within one variable as well. Okay. So where and how to use variables. I'll start jumping into Lectora and show you some of these in a minute, but basically anything the user can do in a course can interact with a variable in some way. So you've got your actions and triggers in Lectora, so things can happen when someone clicks on something, when something appears on the screen, so on click, on show. You can have something happen when something hides. So if you've run an action to hide an object, you can trigger a variable based on that. You can have it simply when the page itself loads. So as soon as a page opens, something gets triggered. Things like tracking whether users have done something on the page can be done as well. Lectora also has a use of timers. So you can have a timer based on how long something's happening, and variables can change based on that, whether it's just counting the time or something happens when a timer runs out. So some common uses there, which we've seen before, and we'll do a bit of a demo in a second. Tracking attempts for a quiz. So if people only get to try their quiz 2 or 3 times, you can use a little counter for that, and then have different things happen based on where that count gets up to. So if they've tried 3 times, they have to start again, etc. All that sort of stuff as well. You can also use it pretty often for hiding and showing content based on something else happening. So if a user has clicked a certain thing, it can show an object, and we can have Lectora remember that they've done that in the past as well. So reissuing actions, things like that within pages, we can have things happen once or twice and remember that it's happened before, so users don't have to keep redoing things, and you're able to track what's happened within a course as well. And then, of course, you can use it to store user input. So the most sort of common thing there, which you may not even notice within Lectora, is using questions. Whenever you have a question in Lectora and a user selects an answer, that's saving that answer into a variable. So Lectora is keeping track of what answer they've chosen, whether that was right or wrong, all that sort of stuff are examples of what Lectora itself will just do naturally with those as well. So from there, I think we can jump into a little bit of an example and actually show you some stuff as well. So for a little demo, just what we're going to do in a second, I'll open up Lectora, but we're going to have the user in a course enter their name, and we can display that name dynamically within a course, and I'll explain how some of that works as well in Lectora. So let me jump over to my course here. I've just got a bit of an example one set up with one of our course frameworks and themes, so we've got a little bit of visual here. Just some example pages. Let me get to a standard page. Let's do something like this, just so we got some content to look at. I'll move this thing up out of the way. And what we're going to add in here is an object that allows the user to enter information. So in this case, it's going to enter their name. And the way we do that is up in the test and survey tab. Because this is sort of the basis of a question object, we have what's called an entry field. So this is just a box that the user can type something into. So if I pop that open, a little box here, pop that down there. We usually like to have sort of a label or something to do with that as well. So depending on what we're doing, we can insert our own little text block. I want to pop a text block next to that. Move it down here. And I'll just do this so that we can see what we're doing with this one. Obviously, you can design these things any way you want. Once you understand how it works, you can do a lot of stuff here and play around with them. So let's pop that over there. This is indicating they have to put their name in. Now, on the entry field itself, if I go up into my properties tab in Lectora here, you've got the name of the object, which is just entry 1. You can rename that whatever you want it to be. You can call it name field, something like that. So you know what it is. I'll talk a little bit later about naming conventions and managing variables and things like that as well. The next little section here, the variable section itself, controls what the variable's called that Lectora is using there, how it's actually using that, and where you can identify it later. So by default, you guys over here. By default, it'll give its own little name. Since this is an entry field, it's created a variable called entry 001. So if we need to ask Lectora what's been typed into this box, that's the name of this box, if that makes sense. You can rename it if you want it to be something else. I'll leave it as the default for now, but often you rename it to something that you will remember, that you can find easily. The next part here, which in this case is a bit different because we can see it on the screen, but variables can have certain values assigned to them to start with. They can be blank or empty. They can start at 0 if it's a counter. They can start at a certain word or something if you want to do it that way as well. For an entry field, if we give it an initial text or initial value, that will actually display in the box when it pops up. So you'll often see on a website when you've got an entry field to fill in, if it's a form or something, you'll see it says name or number or whatever it is until you type something into it. That's that initial value as well. We'll leave this one blank just for visuals. So we've got the name label next to it and we've got the box there. The last little thing here for an entry field specifically is you've got some behavior options as well. So not specifically to do with the variable itself, but you can control what they can actually put in here. So example, you can set a max amount of characters in here if you don't want them to write an 80 character long name because of whatever you're using it for might be too small. You can limit that from this little section here. There's different settings as well. You can have it so if it's a password, it comes up as little stars, that sort of stuff they do on websites as well. You can set it so that it can only be numbers. So if you're making an entry field for someone to type in numerical information, you can stop them from typing letters into it as well. I'll talk a little bit about how Lectora handles that, but we'll just leave all these as is now. And the last little bit in this case as well, and for all variables, is you can choose whether or not it retains the value of that variable, which means that when they close the course, so even when it's in the LMS, if they close their course down and they go back in, it'll either remember what was in the variable last time or it'll remove it. So if we want to retain that in between sessions, we can tick that one on as well. In this example, none of that matters too much, but just a bit of an idea of what's there. So essentially we have a little box here. We have a label. If the user types their name into this box, Lectora is going to remember that. So if we've got a little jar that says name on it, we've written someone's name and popped it in the jar. So at any point in the course, if we want to check whose name's in the jar, we can do that. So before we enter any fields in there, I'll go to another page here. Let's go knowledge check, for example, this next page. I'm just going to add a bit of text to this one. So what we're going to do here is display the variable itself. So there used to be a way you could have a text block and you just set an action to change the text to equal a certain variable or something like that. So it'll just change it to say a counter or it'll say a name or something like that. We also have the option to insert variable values within a text block, which is a different way of doing it. And the way we do that is I'll just start out with some text here, just type hi, and then up in the properties tab, there's a little variable section here. I can add a variable within the text block that I'm in now. Pop that open. I can then find a variable. There's a lot here. I'll go through what these mean a bit later. But we're looking for the one that we set before, which was entry 0001 here. And this puts this funny little sort of code where it's got VAR and in brackets it's got the name of the variable. And you can use that yourself anywhere in the course. You can type it manual if you want, or you can pick it from a list using that option I just used there. So if I put a little comma here and a space and push some text there, you can imagine Lectora is now going to change this VAR brackets into whatever's in that variable. So we're sort of personalizing the course here. So this is one that people commonly use. Maybe at the start of a course, they enter their name, and that way throughout the course, it's addressing the user. So it gives that sort of little personal touch. It's just a way for you to re-display information as well. We can have this on every page. We can have it wherever we want as many times as we want. If they go back and change their name for whatever reason, it will then change it on each page when they come back to it as well. So that's a little default example of doing that. If we pop back to our other page and we preview our course, give me a little box, pop my name in. Once that's in, I can click next to my other page. And you can see it's just replaced it. I will use this interaction as a quick check. So it's just personalizing it. Another common way of using that for another type of variable would be things like displaying the score at the end of a course. You can do that same thing where you'll have the VAR and then whatever your score variable is called, which is one of the ones that Lectora does itself. It'll sit there within the course and it'll display the score whenever it changes. So you can easily display that whenever you want to as well. So that variable is a text-based variable. A score one would obviously be numbers. We can pick and choose between those as well. And that'll stay between different pages. So no matter how many pages we go to, as long as we've used that little VAR text in there somewhere, it'll display it as well. This is also how we used to do certificates in Lectora. You'd have an option for them to put their name in, and then when they get to a page at the end that's a printable certificate sort of page, it'll display that information. It'll have their name there. It'll show the date, because the date's also something Lectora stores as a variable. You can have all that sort of information fairly easily in there as well. So that's just a quick example of storing a variable and displaying it again on another page. So from there, now that we've added one, I will talk a little bit about keeping track of your variables and how they work. So let me just jump back over here. Do we have any questions on that little demo before I move to the next one? Everyone okay with that?
All good.
Good. Again, just let me know in the chat if anyone has any questions. If you don't feel like chiming in through the screen as well, we'll move along to the next one. Okay, so in general, as I said, variables can get messy if you make a lot of them, if you're using them in lots of different ways, if you're not consistent. You'll see this pretty often if you've worked in courses that other people have built, because everybody uses things slightly differently. They may have a certain logic or a certain way of naming things and using things in Lectora that other people use differently. And if you don't know sort of how they've done it, it's a bit tricky to get through there as well. So a couple of tips are keeping track of them and keeping them tidy as well. Whenever I make my own variable for something, this is an example of where you can set a naming convention of what the variable is to do with, so what it's regarding. If it's a quiz-based one, you can call it quiz underscore and then add some sort of text at the end so you know what it's called. Normally for me, any variables that I use as my own, I'll always have an underscore at the start, because that actually puts them at the top of any list when I'm looking at variables. So I don't have to look through this big long list of Lectora's variables that it's got. I know all mine are sitting at the top as well. So an example I'll show you in a minute when we go through there. When you are using a lot of different variables and they're being used for different things, it's often easier to group actions together if they're related to the same sort of variable. So if it's in one of the training sessions we used to do, we'd have a long series of variables where we're doing a calculation. So we get a number from the user, we add something to it, we subtract something from it, times whatever else we're doing, and all of that sits in one group of actions so that we don't have to go looking for all the times that variable's being updated, which we'll go through how to do that in another demo in a second. The other thing there, as far as tracking them and testing them as well, we did a session in one of these monthly sessions about the debug mode and how you can display variables when you work through them. That's a good way to see what your variables are doing. You can basically, without displaying them on the screen in the course itself, you can see what a variable is doing, what pages it's used on, and what the value is at any point in the course. So when you're testing it, and I'll show a bit of that when we build another page in a second. You can also just manually show the text on the screen. So the way I just showed the name on the screen, often a quick thing to test a variable to see if it's working is to just pop a random text block on the screen using that VAR thing, so that at any point when we change a variable, we can see what it does. So even if it's something that's not normally going to be visible, if it's a counter or it's tracking whether the user has done something, we use that in the background in Lectora to control stuff, but we don't actually show the user that value. Whereas you can have that displayed on the screen. So you can see as the counter goes up, you can see when it's if it's an on or off type thing, you can see what it's set to. There's different ways of doing that. So I can show that in another little example in a second as well. So just, keeping them tidy, that's a big thing. As with everything in Lectora, you can leave things as all the default names, but if you forget what they were or where they were, you've got text block 1 through 87, and you've got default variable 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It gets very confusing. So just naming things and keeping track of them is always a good idea. Go through from here. Go back a bit. So in a second, we'll do another example that uses a few more of these things, mainly with variables as well. But we often use conditions in Lectora in conjunction with variables. So as we said at the start, variables can be used to set up things like branching or controlling navigation. So you can block off the next button until something's happened based on a variable. This is all to do with the conditions in Lectora. So we can set up an action to go to the next page or show an object. But we can also say that only happens if something else has happened as well. And I'll show this in Lectora in a second. So that means a common example of that would be if they have to click 3 objects on the screen, you can set it up so that the next button doesn't appear until they have clicked all 3 of those objects. And that's using one of these conditions. You can get even more complex with those using and or. So for example, if there's 3 objects to click, you would say if this object's been clicked and this object's been clicked and this object's been clicked, then we can go to the next page. And you can also have an or. So if either of 2 things have happened, you can control it that way. I'll show that in practice in a minute as well. A couple of examples of that just on the screen, very basic stuff to do with like a quiz. You could say if the score is more than 80, they go to the pass screen. Lectora does this automatically in some cases, but you can manually set up something like that. So there's a way to set up a condition based on that score variable, what number that is, and the relationship to whether it's greater than a certain number or less than. You can work through it that way as well. The other option as well is maybe they have to have passed the quiz and also visited a certain page. So that example underneath is if visited intro might be a variable you've set up, and passed quiz may be another one. Then it unlocks the next screen because they've done both of those things, as an example. And we'll put this into practice in a second as well. I talked a little bit about branching in general with variables. They don't have to be your own variables you set up. They can be based on things that have happened already in Lectora. So things like the quiz score or whether they visited certain pages. But essentially we can use those variables to control whether they can go next, whether they can click a button, which page they go to, all that sort of stuff as well. So you can unlock pages based on the progress they've made. And then also you may have two different paths that a user can go through depending on a variable value. So a common example we often use there is with a course where at the start they have to select a role that's based on what they actually do with the company, and they're shown relevant information that may go to a different chapter or a different section based on the role they selected. So they might get different information or questions as a manager than they would as a user, or different types of roles as well. And we can do that with conditions, branching, and variables as well. So just through a bit of an example of that we can apply to all of those things. I'll do a bit of a demo on tracking the progress of an interaction. So as users click something, how do we know what they've clicked, and how can we do something based on that happening? We can use that to block next buttons or any sort of navigation. We can also use that to control branching as well. So I'll jump back to my Lectora here. Any questions before we jump into that? Some of this stuff gets pretty complicated till you see it, but here we go. So I'll go back to one of these other pages. Let's go, actually knowledge check might be able to work. Otherwise I'll go to my page I had before. Let's do objectives here. I'll add some extra options onto this page. Move this stuff up out of the way. So just going to add a simple click and reveal type interaction first, and then we're going to apply some variables to that. Okay, so I need to add a couple of different things here. Let me insert a couple of buttons. I'll just do this really basically, and we'll show what we need to do. I'll always keep things fairly labeled so I know what's going on. And we can use our copy and paste, and we can do a couple of different things here. So just using my keyboard, I'm going to copy and paste these a couple times. I just want to have 3 buttons. I won't worry about lining everything up too much, even though my brain really wants me to do that. I've got 3 buttons here. I'll also add a little bit of text under each one. Maybe I'll copy this so we've got a bit of information there. These underneath. Like this. What I'm going to do is set up 3 different bits of text and have them appear based on clicking these buttons. Okay, so obviously you would have different information coming up here. I'm just doing this example with the 3 that we've got. Okay, so we've got 3 buttons, we've got 3 bits of text. Put these somewhere where I can see them. And I'll just quickly fix these up. And you can do this to an existing page. You can do this to your own page starting from scratch. I'm just showing you how to do it completely from a blank screen, but we can obviously have a page with objects on it already and start applying these features here. So the first step in this type of interaction, which I'd probably say is one of the more common interactions that are interesting but easy to do in Lectora, is this click and reveal. So we've got 3 buttons, 3 bits of text. First thing we want to do is make sure the text won't appear to start with. So I need to make these hidden. If I select all 3, in my properties tab, I can make these initially hidden, which is my little checkbox here. So what this means is that when I first open my screen, they will not appear until I've done something to make them appear. So far there's no variables here. This is just buttons and objects. Now each of my buttons, if I go to the action sitting underneath them, I can have each of these display my text. I might just rename some of these text blocks so we can see what's going on here. Okay, so content 1, 2, 3, and I've got button 1, 2, 3 as well. And again, you could just do all this stuff without naming them, but it gets very complicated and very messy if you don't. So my first button, I'm going to trigger when I click my button. So on mouse click, the action I want to use here is to show. So every action's got 3 sections. We've got the trigger, which is clicking the button. We've got what's going to happen, which is showing something. And then we've got the target, which is what we're going to show. So in this case, we want to show content 1, which is my first text block. Now I can do the same for each of these buttons. So show content 2 and show content 3. Okay, so again, before we do any variables, I'll just preview this and show you what's going to happen. On my little page, got my 3 buttons. As I click each one, it shows the text. So nice simple stuff. You've probably seen or done things like that in Lectora pretty often. Now what happens at the moment is we can click all 3 of those and we go next. The user could just also click next and not even touch the buttons. So this is where we want to apply some variables as well. So firstly, we want to set a variable that's going to track what's happening on this page. Now you can create variables in line with an action. So when you're setting up an action, it gives you an option to add a variable, but I think I'd rather show where the variables actually live, where you can control them as well. So up here in the variable manager under tools, pop this open. This shows you all the variables in Lectora. I mentioned before that Lectora's got its own built-in variables. So this second list here is everything that Lectora will automatically be tracking or using. So things like the score, whether you've completed the course. If you add a quiz, it'll have the quiz details, question variables, all that sort of stuff. Anything that pops up when you've added an object in Lectora. So for example, our entry field comes up here because that's created by Lectora when we made the entry field. Now, if we want to track something else that Lectora is not already doing, we set up our own under the user-defined fields here. So if I want to add a new one, I can go add here, and I need to set up a couple of things. First of all, we mentioned before, it needs a name. Again, when I'm making my own, I always do underscore as the start. One thing with variable names is that they can't have spaces in them. So that's why you'll often see them written either with no spaces or with underscores as well. You'll see that quite often. So in this case, I'm just going to go underscore reveal. That can be what I want to use it for. If I was doing this multiple times in a course, I could use the page name as the variable name or something similar, just so I know what it is aside from any other times that we're using the same thing. So variable name reveal is just for this page. The initial value by default here is 0. Again, if I was doing a counter or something, we could do it that way. There are 2 ways of doing something like this where we could just count 1, 2, 3, so we know that they've clicked 3 times. The problem with that is that if someone sets it up that way, they could click the first button 3 times and it would also count to 3. So I'll show you my method that I use even when it's not necessary, just because it's the same amount of work either way, which is I will use letters instead, and I'll explain as I go. So I just want this initial value to be blank. So I just backspace there, the variable's empty to start with. I also want to retain this between sessions. So what this means is that if the user's done this page before and they've revealed all the buttons, they don't want to have to click that every time they come to this page. So it's going to remember that they've clicked it before. Okay, so that's all we need to do from there, and we can click OK. So we've now got a reveal variable that we can work with. Now for this to work, we need each button to adjust this variable to in a way for us to know that they've clicked the button. And the way that we do that is on the button itself, I'm going to add an action, a new one here. Again, it's going to be when they click the mouse, that's fine. The action in this case is modify variable. So this is adding or changing the value of a variable. So if I go modify here, I want to target my reveal. So you've always got to find the right one. So you're using the right one here. Again, because I've done underscores, it brings it right at the top. And it's because it's the only one I've made, it actually auto-filled it for me because it was the first one. Now what we're going to do in this case is add to this variable. So we're adding a value as each button is clicked. So I can go to add here. And what I want to do in this case is add in the letter A. So A is going to represent button 1. So again, I'll explain why I don't want to use numbers, but adding the value A means that I've clicked button 1. Okay, so from there I can leave it. I can do the same thing on the other 2. I'll go through step by step. So add another action. Modify, reveal, make sure I'm adding to it. And this time I want to add B. And then the last one. In this case, I want to add C. So the reason why I want to use letters and not numbers, if I just say add to variable and say add 1, all 3 buttons will add 1. And it will change it, so it'll go 1 and then 2 and then 3. But as I said, if I click the first button 3 times, it'll still count. So I'd have to set up something to say only do it the first time you've clicked, and it just gets way more complicated than it needs to be. So in this case, if we just say add a, we can actually use a condition later to check if the variable has an a in it. So it's not saying what does the variable equal to, what count is it up to, what number is it up to. It's just saying has it got an a in it. And if it has an a, it means this button has been clicked. Doesn't matter how many times, doesn't matter if I've clicked the other ones. It also doesn't matter what order I click them in, because it could end up saying BAC or ABC. All it's doing is checking if that A is there somewhere. So if I've done that with all three, I've got A, B, and C, that will then add to that variable. And again, no matter how many times I click these, it'll still be true that I've got an A in there. So the next thing we need to do is adjust the next button. Okay, so I'm going to add a new action, which this one's going to be a set state action, which I'm going to enable my next button. So this allows you to disable buttons, change the color, all these sort of things. If I say next button, set to normal, but I'm going to add a condition here. So at the end of every action, we can add a condition. Pop this open, and this is where I can bring my variables back. So my condition to unlock my next button would be, does reveal contain the letter A? But for me to know I've done all three, I need to say reveal contains letter B, and so on. You can do this for as many as you like. It only gets complicated if you get past 26 buttons you want to click, but there's ways around that as well. So if this contains A, B, and C, it'll then do what I want it to do. So if I've clicked the first one, nothing happens. Click the second one, nothing happens, etc. Because it's checking each one separately, again, the order doesn't matter either. It's not saying, does it equal A, B, C? Because that would mean they have to have clicked them 1, 2, 3 in that order. But if they've done any order they want, it'll have these letters in here somewhere. And I'll show you the variable itself as we click them in a minute as well. The other thing here, which we won't do in this case, you can also say with conditions whether you want everything to be true or you just want any option to be true. So if you need them to click things on the page but not all of them, you can say any condition, which means that as long as it's got A, B, or C in it, it'll work. So there's times where that's useful. We won't go through that one in this example, but just pointing that out as well. So in this case, we want to say all conditions are true. All three letters have to be in there. I'll click OK. And this action is actually going to be the same for all three buttons now, because it doesn't matter which one I click last. I want that one to unlock my button as long as it's hit all three options. Okay, so with those three actions, essentially it's going to show my text, add the letter, and then check if I can open the next button as well. At the moment, the next button isn't actually disabled anyway, so it won't actually do this action. So what we want to do as well is just make sure we either initially disable that so that on every page it starts off disabled, or you can actually do the reverse action here. On the start of this page in particular, I want to set the state of my button next to disabled. And this is where I'm going to show you the other way of doing these actions. So if I say reveal does not contain A, I'm just going to copy and paste this one to save time, change my letters. And in this case, I want to say that if any of these three options are true, so if there's any one letter missing, it's not gonna do it. So it's going to disable it. And that way we're tracking the opposite. So if they've done A and B, it still tracks this as being disabled. So if I click OK. Now I'll show you that just the page itself without doing anything else. Firstly, preview, we should see the button here is blanked out. So my first action's triggered. That happens right at the top because it's sitting on my page itself. So when the page loads, it blocks the next button because I haven't clicked anything yet. As I click each button, it's going to tick these off. So if I click button 1, my variable should now say A. If I click button 3, it should now say C. If I click button 2, it'll say B. Because all three are in there, my button's unlocked and I can do it from there. And the benefit of doing that on each button as well is, again, the order doesn't matter. I can click any order I want. Also, if I go to the next page and I come back, my text is missing, which I can fix in a second with the same conditions, but my button's also still unlocked because it's still true that I had clicked those buttons. So it's remembering the fact that they were clicked. And again, it doesn't matter which order they're in. Now, to show you this actually happening, I'm going to quickly show you in this debug mode as well. Okay, oh, this might be tricky because of my Lectora screen. Let me get creative here. Go like this. And this is its own little window, so it's going to hide it otherwise. My variables. Yeah, so at the moment I've got my reveal variable there, which it says null, which means it's empty. Move it over here. As I click each button, if I refresh this, you can see it says A. With the next button, C and B. Now, in this example, because it doesn't matter how many times the letters are in there, if I just go crazy and click these buttons a bit, it's still adding the letters every time. If I refresh this again, it's now some crazy abracadabra thing. That's sitting there because I've just clicked all of them multiple times. It doesn't affect the variable, it doesn't affect the condition, because all it's doing is checking whether the A is there at all. If you wanted to keep that tidy, we can also set an action to add A if it doesn't already contain A. Sometimes I do that to keep things a bit tidier, but this doesn't actually matter if this is done this way. It knows we've clicked it, it knows we haven't clicked the others, and that's essentially how it works from clicking those options. And I'd use this ABC option for any type of example like this. Anytime you want to know that they've clicked stuff, I'd always use the ABC, even if they're forced to do it in order. You don't have to, you can just use numbers, you can count it. If these buttons were blocked off each time they clicked, it would stop them clicking them again, so it wouldn't impact that count option. But I just get used to doing it this way with the A, B, and C, because it works in every case, whether or not you're doing it with those options. So that's a quick way to set that up. If you wanted to check that on the screen as well, we could also add that little bit of text that shows the variable. So I got properties, variable, reveal. What this is going to do is actually show me real time as I go through what's happening with that number. So that's also useful if you want to be displaying the result of something being clicked. It doesn't have to be letters, it can be words. You can manually add words by clicking as each variable, as long as it's modifying it, it's going to update that as it's displayed as well. But that little quick click and reveal is probably one of the most common ones that I'll probably use in Lectora as well. And you can apply that to multiple other things. So if you've got a menu screen, you can say once they've clicked all 4 menu buttons, it unlocks the quiz, for example. And that's just using different types of variables. So just while we have this open, I'll go back into my variable manager. I can talk a little bit about what types of variables Lectora's already got in there rather than you making them yourself. So if I go to reserved variables, commonly used one you've probably seen in templates as well is things like the current page. So down here, current page name, Lectora keeps track of the name of each page directly from this list. So whatever you've called it on the right, on the left, it's going to come up as that name, and you can use that to display it on the screen. You can use that to create menus. It'll just track those names as well. Tells you what page you're on, as well as sections and chapters. If you're in different areas, you can display those. I mentioned before you can show the date. It'll always track the current date in a certain format as well. Current time if you really need that as you go through. You can also get more details about things in Lectora. So if you want to know how many pages are in the course or in a chapter, there's a variable called pages in chapter, which is that total figure. So if you've got 10 pages, it says 10, and you can use that number. So things like a page counter, which is naturally sitting there in Lectora, is using this variable. So you don't have to make it yourself. That's tracking how many pages there are. And then the similar but sort of other point of that is page in chapter. So if it's not plural, it's just page, that's the current number of that page. So again, using your page counter, if you go page in title out of pages in title, it'll say 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10 as you go through each page. So making use of things like that's really handy in Lectora. The other one that's obviously used mostly are things like questions. So every question you create in Lectora has its own little variable here, and that tells you the answer to the question. So the correct answer is dictated by Lectora itself, but what current answer has been selected is displayed in that as well. So you can use that for different options. So using that variable, you can say a page can't continue, a button can't unlock unless a certain question is correct, or even if a certain question has a certain value in it. So if you want different feedback to pop up for different question answers, you can use that as well. Same thing with scores. You've got a test score, tells you the number that your score's on. The other important thing, just while we're here in the variable manager as well, is every variable we've got here, it tells you what pages it's being used on and where. So if I go to my reveal variable back over here, you can see what page it is. So objectives right, which is the name of this page. And it says every action that uses this variable in some way, even if it's in a condition. So you can see on show set state, that's the one right at the top. If I click on these, it actually shows me over the side. Right, content, it's used there because I've put it in that text block. So I can actually see it's being used in that one. And then each of these are my actions down here. So it's modifying the variable, it's checking the button, it's modifying, it's checking, all those things as well. So if you're getting really complicated with your variables and something's going wrong or something's not clicking properly, you can double check if you've used it properly, what pages it's on. A really common thing is to copy a page that uses a variable and not realize that you've then got two pages using the same one. So if I duplicated this page I'm using now and made the same interaction on another page, I'd have to use different letters because I've already then said ABC is for this page. So that means they get to the new page and it thinks they've done it already because it's using the same variable and the same values as well. So a bit of a long example, but again, if you get used to making things like these and setting up that ABC option, you can do a lot with variables, a lot with Lectora. So really handy to control things like that as well. If down the track somewhere I mentioned about controlling different types of navigation, if these buttons instead of or as well as showing this text, if they indicated a certain role that the user was choosing, so maybe this one says manager, this one says student, whatever other options there are, this can tick off a box saying, okay, they've selected that option. You could then have a next button go to different pages based on what value that's on. So if we were to do that on this next button here, if I set an example action, move this out the way. We won't set this up because it doesn't make sense with the A, B, and C. But if I say go to this page, say for example, it goes to question 1. If reveal, in this case, I might say equals A. And then if I repeat that action, oops, wrong one. Not letting me copy that. Copy, paste, paste, paste. If I say this one is go to question 2, if that variable is equal to B, and go to question 3. You can use this for different chapters, for different things. So the same button can go to different places depending on what happens. What we'd have to do in this case is make sure that it can't be A and B and C, because we want to make sure that it's only doing one or the other. But now in that case, this button is going to go to any of these 3 pages based on which letter I selected there. So you can have a branching scenario from that with the same button. So that example could be, yeah, you have a variable called underscore roles, and if it equals manager, goes to page chapter 1. If it equals student, goes to chapter 2, etc. And you can do it that way as well. So navigation, blocking it, as well as controlling where it goes, is possible with all of those as well. Now in Lectora, you know, you've got your pass and fail pages. The quiz in Lectora itself handles that, so you don't really have to set up your own variable for that, but it is technically using a variable in the background. So it's saying, have you passed the test? If you have, go to this page. If not, you go to this page. If for whatever reason you needed to manually set that up, you could do the exact same thing. So the next button goes to pass page if quiz is passed, or fail page if it's not. You can do things like that as well. Let me jump back here. Do we have any questions on that? That was a bit of a long example. Does that bring up any questions at all for anyone? Raise your hand in there or send a chat or sing out if there's any questions. Everyone's okay? Good. So last little thing we want to go through a little bit is communicating with the LMS. So we talked a bit about scores and quizzes and all that sort of stuff. Probably a pretty common thing used in Lectora. Most of these things end up as a SCORM package, and that needs to talk to the LMS in a certain way. There's different ways of doing that, whether it's automatically or manually. I mentioned some of the built-in variables in Lectora. Some of these are related to your SCORM package. So for example, AICC score will change the score based on any quiz you've got in the course. So if you've got a tracked quiz, whatever that score is, how many questions they get right, that's going to change that number to 80, 100, 75, whatever it makes sense to be. AICC lesson status controls the completion in your course. So if you've completed the quiz, or by whatever's controlling whether you've completed a course, you can set that there, and that tells the LMS that you've done it as well. Most systems need a score and a status to work, but some will automatically say you've completed it if the score was passed as well. So I often manually put both of these in anyway, just to be sure, even though Lectora's quiz will attempt to do this anyway. You've just got a bit more control that way. And most of these are automatically tracked as well. So the quiz score is automatically tracked as you run through the quiz, and it points to this AICC score. Likewise with completion, that's usually based on either completing the quiz or getting to the end. Sorry. And that's adjusting that lesson status as well. Now, if you want to manually update things like this, you can manually change these variables yourself. So if you don't want to have a quiz, a common issue we see is someone trying to publish a SCORM package, and it pops up with a warning saying you've got no lesson status, you've got no score, so it can't be a SCORM package. Some people build a course that doesn't actually have a quiz in it. It may just be displaying information, and you do need to have that score at the end for the variable to work, for the SCORM package to work as well. So you can just manually set these at the end, which I can quickly show you where that is. So a little bit of a demo there. If I jump back in here as well, for example, on the pass page, we can do this. It's actually already doing some of it for me. I see here, you can see an action. Bring this open. What's going on here? Move that out of the way. So this action on the pass page says set AICC lesson status to complete. And this is the action here. So this variable sitting here in Lectora, lesson status, it's important not to mix this up. So you don't want to do completion status, that's a different type of variable. Lesson locations, different. Core lesson, that's all different. The only one you really need, unless you know your system needs something else, is lesson status and score. So in this case, lesson status is set to completed when it hits this pass page. So because they know they won't get to the pass page without already passing the quiz, because they've already set it up that way, that's where this hits on the pass page. So if it was one of those example courses with no quiz at all, you just have the last page you go to, manually do this action if you want. And that ticks it off in the LMS. Now, we often see this come through as a support issue where the LMS is saying that the value is wrong. You'll often see a sort of error code that says something like LMS set value error, something like that. Often that's referring to this text here and what that's being set to. So the LMS is very particular about what word or what, even whether it's capital C or not, what it's actually expecting in there. So completed, all lowercase, is the most common one, unless you know your LMS needs something else. And the LMS team would know that as well if it's been set differently. But most of the common ones will expect completed to be viewed there. The score is a lot easier because the score is just a number. In this case, there's no score action, so I'll just add that to show you. Add an action. I'll just call that, to follow the same pattern, I'll call that set AICC score to 100. So in this case, there is a quiz, but I'm sort of bypassing that. So I'm overriding the quiz score here, which you don't want to do unless you mean to do that. Modify variable, set that to AICC score, and I can set that equal to 100. So what that means is as soon as they hit this page, it triggers these two actions. It'll set their score to 100. It'll set the lesson status to completed. It'll tell the LMS both of those things once it's closed, and that's all it's needing in the LMS as well. So that ticks those off. If you just have these two actions at the end of any course, doesn't matter what they did in the quiz, doesn't matter what else happened in the course, LMS will say, yep, it's done, they got 100 points, so they got 100%. Or you can manually set this instead as well. So you could set the AICC score here to equal this test score if you want to. That will back that up as well. But essentially, these are these two values that you're looking for there as well. And that pops those in automatically. Also, on the page at the end, this is where you may set things like this. You can see your score equals VAR test 1 score. That's updating whatever this test score ended up being. It'll show that on the screen here. It's important to note that the AICC score doesn't actually pop up until you've completed the course and marked it through to the LMS. So you don't want to use that one as a display. You actually want this test score, which is the test itself. A little bit complicated there, but AICC score should equal the test score if it's been set up properly in Lectora. Otherwise, you manually set it here, and it controls both of those actions depending on what you're setting up. And once that's done, any course will allow you to publish to a SCORM package as long as it's got these. Even if it's not setting it to 100 or completed, as long as it's interacting with these variables, it's going to be okay. So you could say this is set to incomplete for whatever reason, or this is set to 50%, if that makes sense in the course. If you are manually tracking these, you just got to keep track of where you've done that as well. So, and important to know that you need the score to be done before the status is done, because the status sort of locks in whatever state's currently there. So if I flip these around, it actually wouldn't do this second one because it'd say complete. Think of that as sort of submitting your test. So it's submitting it into the LMS. You've then changed the score afterwards to 100, but it's going to ignore that because you've already given it the test. I hope that all makes sense as far as communicating back from the LMS. I did have a last little screen that I was going to sort of demonstrate, but requires uploading into an LMS, which we can sort of show a video or something like that later. But essentially, you can go back the other way as well. So far, we're talking about putting data into the LMS. You can actually pull variables information from the LMS as well. So there is a variable called username, which will dictate whatever the actual user's name itself is in the LMS as well. So rather than allowing the user to type their own name in, you can have it display from the LMS, so it's always correct. They can't change the name, they can't fiddle around with it. You can have that display throughout your course as well, which I believe the option here is, this isn't set as a SCORM one, I don't think it is. It should be in there. Depending on what that is, it'll be AICC username or something similar. Not sure why it's not coming up in this one. Might be there somewhere. Student name should be there. I'll have to have a look at why that's not popping up. But normally you would have the student name that you can pull out from the LMS and display on the screen as well, if you did want to personalize it, rather than doing that manual step at the end or inside the course itself, because they can really type in whatever they want into those boxes. If you want to set that option up like we did on the first screen, that's not really going to help keeping track of that properly. So I'll jump back out here and I can open it up there if there were any other questions. I'm hoping that there was a lot there, but I'm hoping that went through most of the main things that we need to know with variables. I think that reveal page is probably the most common one I'll show people or go through, because once you know how to do that, you can do a lot more with variables and control things. There's a lot to do with things like page names, page counters. Lectora does a lot of this stuff for you with certain objects as well, but knowing how it's doing it obviously helps you make changes to that as well. So pop up from here and I'll put my camera back on and see if anyone had any other questions. Hopefully that was enlightening for everyone. And again, as Michael said, we will be putting out this recording. We'll do this session again next Wednesday as well. So if anyone missed it or you had anyone who couldn't go today and wanted to see it, let them know. We'll do this one again and pop it through there. So yeah, no one's got any other questions? Anything to add, Michael?
No, I was just going to say, variables is always one of those tricky ones, a lot of information that happens with it. But once you learn how they work and practice them, it becomes so much easier. And we're happy to constantly do variable sessions. So if you ever see a page or want a page to do something and you can't get it, send it through to the support. I'll send it through to Will and myself. We'll have a look at it and maybe it'll become one of these sessions. Same as any page that you might see out there, even if it's something built in another authoring tool, send it through to us and we can do a session showing you how to sort of design pages and do variables with any of those sorts of things. So
yeah, if there's any more specific setups or anything like that, we can go through that in a demo in one of these sessions. We can have a variables 2.0 session or something like that that goes through a more specific setup. I know I mentioned there's stuff you can do with numbers and counting. We didn't really look at too much of that because depending on what you're sort of setting up, that's not as practical for most interactions, but you can definitely set up numbers and calculations and all this sort of stuff. We used to do an example in our training course where you did a bunch of maths calculations just to demonstrate how the variables work. But yeah, hopefully that's all making sense. So yeah.
Yeah, we'll happily do variables every single month if we need to.
until everyone gets it.
until it's there.
That's it. No, yeah. Any other examples or specific things, even if it's pretty close to what we went through today, but didn't quite answer your question, definitely send it through. Let us know. I've got our support email there, but I think most of you probably already have that anyway. But definitely send up any follow-up questions. If you think you can do something with variables, but you're not sure how, let us know. We can figure it out. Or if it can't be done, I'll be very surprised, but I'll let you know. And we can go from there.
A lot of those I do sort of fiddle around with actions to get the same thing to happen. But is it better to use variables than actions?
It's more so you often use actions anyway, but the main difference is that the variable will remember what's happened. So you can have something happen on the first screen one time, and then if you want it to happen again when they come back, or you want to be able to know that they've done it, that's where you want to use the variable. So the key thing there is that it's storing that information rather than just happening and then it needs to do it again every time.
Yeah. So if we want them to read something or make sure that it's read or something like that, that you'd use a variable. Okay.
Yeah. It's just it's basically Lectora will remember anything that's happened on a page while you're still there. As soon as you leave a page, it'll just forget everything that's happened. So anything that's shown will hide again. Anything that's hidden will show again. All that sort of stuff. So it's more when you want things to remember what's happened. The variables are stored and remembered from there.
Yeah, a history thing.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. All good.
Thank you.
No problems. Alrighty, we'll leave it there, guys. And as I said, we're working on getting all these recordings up in one place, but we will send this one out to anyone who attended as well. And like I said, if you missed anything, you want to do it again, jump in next week, same time, same place. Yep.
Now, we were going to go through Microbuilder if anyone wanted to stay for longer than an hour, but we do realize variables always do take an hour. So if anyone does want to see Microbuilder, please stay. We will show that afterwards. If everyone has to run away, that's no problems. We'll show it another time.
Sure. Alrighty.
Thank you.
If anyone's... Oh, good. See if anyone sticks around and we'll jump in.
Yeah, sure, Jen.
I'm confused.
Oh no, it's fine. I mean, variables you can get extremely complex with, even to the point of you could have a pre-test for anyone who goes into a module, and depending on what they get out of the 10, maybe they get 3 of them incorrect, and then it opens up only those 3 chapters for the people to go back through rather than people going back through the whole course. You can really get into some complex and pretty cool stuff actually, but it is one of those ones where we want to spend the time, and because once you lose yourself, like even with Will talking today, you can lose yourself. And then it's you got to retain it, and it's just coming back to practicing and like we'll run this session again next Wednesday if you wanted to jump back on again to hear it again, and we will put the video up as well. But like we said, we're happy to do these every single month till people recognize it, because the variables is really powerful. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, if you found anything didn't quite make sense or needed more coverage from today, I can incorporate that into next week, even if you're not showing up. Might be better for the other people as well.
Yeah,
we'll have both recordings.
I can't come next week. I'm on leave.
Oh, nice.
Good. No worries.
Yeah, because I've found variables, if they don't work, I've just been deleting them out of other people's things and working out how to do it with actions, because I just couldn't get my head around how you were supposed to use them.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes having a specific look at what's set up to understand it as well.
And like you said, when you're doing someone else's, it's hard sometimes to work out what it is they've done.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's just getting the process in your head that the variable, once you create the name, you're creating a bucket, and then when something happens, you're putting something into that bucket, and then you've got to do an action to check the bucket to see if what's happened is going to then open the next button or go somewhere or do something. So it's just trying to get that logic across of how it all works. That's the way I think of it. I'm creating a bucket, and I'm calling this bucket whatever, and I'm going to put stuff in it, and then I'm going to do an action to check that my bucket and move on.
It's definitely a skill you have to keep.
Yeah, it's getting your head around it, isn't it?
Yeah. And like Will showed there, which is quite powerful, is the debug mode. People don't use the debug mode.
I never do. I don't know what it is.
It shows people exactly what might be going wrong. So, I mean, we can happily show you just whenever you hit a snag, if we can help you show the debug, because that'll also help in the future of quickly identifying what's gone wrong and fixing it. Yeah.
So does a debug, it doesn't go through the whole course, it just looks at whatever it is you're on?
It'll sit alongside as you go through the course, and everything that happens, it'll do a little sort of log of what's happening, and you can check the variables and all that sort of stuff. So again, you need to know how to read it for it to be useful. But it's really handy when you do need it, for sure.
Maybe that'll be a more in depth in our next session, actually, on the debug mode and different scenarios for using it. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect.
Cool. So you've got a couple of people sticking around, I'm guessing, for Microbuilder. So we'll have a quick look here. I've just opened it up on my screen. So as Michael mentioned, it's another tool we've got in our bucket. We're sort of bundling it in with Lectora often now. It's a more rapid authoring tool, really quick and simple for different types of courses. So it does have an option to create a course using AI as well. I won't go through it because it'll take a second, and I want to show an existing one. But if I click on new module here, it's all cloud-based. So as that's loading up, it's all in here. Essentially, we can pop in a prompt for what we want a course to be about. You can add a source document so that it draws actual information if you know you have specific topics, or it's something that's not sort of
or a facilitator's guide
commonly known. Yeah, you want it to be tailored a certain way to your own information. You can use that as well. We've actually started suggesting if people have a storyboard in PowerPoint, you can actually upload a PowerPoint as the source and then put the prompt in, and you'll get a lot of the information pulled out there. That's just for text. You can then go fix it up. Obviously, any AI stuff you want to fix up anyway. Let me just go back here now. I don't want to go through that whole step, and I'll show you one that's already there. Let me jump into this one, show an example. Pop that open. Let me change what it looks like for a second. Essentially, so Microbuilder is, again, one of these sort of simple scrolling type courses that you see quite often now. You've got basic things like headings and text. If I go down here, we can add images, videos as we go. These aren't all super relevant. I've just grabbed things from the asset library. But essentially, once we've set it up here, we'll have a little plus symbol in between each object, and we can add more information. If you want to add more text or an image or any other type of thing, we can add new things in here. So if I pop this open, I'll show you what's there. Okay, so the basic stuff I mentioned, you can add a new heading, which is like one of these. You can add a new paragraph. It's just your basic body text. You can also do a lot of AI stuff within the tool. Anything with this little sort of sparkle symbol will be an AI-based object. So whether it's text-based or there's a video one as well, which I'll go through in a second, it'll basically create those as well. So an analogy or a scenario, you can just give it a prompt and it'll write that up for you. Step-by-step is pretty powerful as well. If you need a series of steps for a process, you can just give it a prompt. It'll set up the steps for you. Again, you just check over to make sure it's all accurate and it's all okay. At the end of your course or throughout, you can also set a question set, which will draw information from within the course itself and create questions based on that as well. So from the start, you can just put a prompt, put a source document in, and then right down the bottom, just say, give me some questions. It'll give you 5 questions based on that information that's already there without you having written anything. And you can update those, you can redo them. You can also add another 5. So if you do another question set, it'll add more for you. It may repeat some because it doesn't track its own questions, but they're fairly easy to add and remove. You can keep doing that until you get enough questions that you're happy with, and you can play around with it. You can set your own manual questions as well. As for media, you can add in images, audio, video, any images or video based stuff you can pull from the asset library. So I'll pop this open. This links out to the ELB asset library, which is 160 plus million types of assets ranging from illustrations, photos, icons, all that sort of stuff as well. You can grab any one of these and really quickly pop them in your course. All the videos and everything I've got in there for now is directly from there. Click on that. Close it, and it'll pop that image in for me. You can do that as well. You can obviously upload your own if you have them as well, anything you want from there. Now, video-based stuff, again, can be asset library. You can record it yourself, so you can film yourself or record something and pop it in, or upload what you've got already. Audio is a special one. If we pop that open, you've got, again, the option to upload audio you've already got. You can record it directly if you want to do your own voiceover. There's also a really powerful text-to-speech option, which is AI-driven, again, based on whatever you want to sort of pop in there. I'll often, as an example, come and grab some text from my course, pop it into my audio. From there, it'll detect a language. If you want to do multi-language, we'll get into translations in a second. You can then pick a voice, which is there's a huge number of voices, 50 something there. It'll tell you what type of voice there is. They've got Santa at the top there if you want Santa. There's different accents. You've got British, American, obviously Australian as well. I think Charlie's the one I usually find there. So Charlie is our Australian voice here. Male, female, you can select. You can also tweak these a little bit. So this is fun to play around with, how fast they're talking, how expressive they are. You can really fiddle with it and get something happening there. And then you can generate the audio and it'll create that for you. So really good for just adding some narration, even if it's just the text that's already on the screen. You can add a quick audio piece for that. Now, am I sharing my audio? Let me just double check. I always say this, that I need to do it by default. I always forget to do it. Okay, it should be back. Generate audio there. You can listen to an example.
This course provides an in-depth understanding of financial security measures tailored for large businesses.
Okay, so it'll read anything you want. It's got a character limit, but it's 5,000 characters. You've got heaps there, and you can use those as much as you want. If you're happy with it, you can click save, and it'll just add that little audio block in there for you as well as you go through, which is here. It'll do captions itself automatically for you. Obviously, transcript, all that sort of stuff it'll do as well. Likewise, if we go down further, we also have the option to add an avatar, which is a similar sort of thing with an extra step, where we can actually select a character, whoever we like. Add this guy. We can then choose a background. You can just choose from basic backgrounds. There's also a flat colored background if you want, like a flat white, or if you want to get creative outside of this, you can use your own tools and do a green screen. I just want to put them in a white background for this one. And again, you can pop some text in. It'll detect the language. You select the voice. I think there was the same characters. I think we had Charlie there again. Let's go Charlie. And generate the audio. So same step as we had before. Once that's done, you can preview it if you want. Otherwise, you can go next step. And it'll generate a video of this man we just saw, character, speaking with that voice and actually talking. And it looks really good, sounds really good. They're really quick, easy ways to add these little sort of avatar character videos. It takes a second for it to go through, depending on how long it is. So I can show you some more stuff while we wait for that and come back. While it's going through, I can actually show an example one. This is with a different voice, but
this course provides an in-depth understanding of financial security measures.
That's a more American voice there. You can also go back and redo that if you want to get a different voice in there. Anything else we add in here, if it's text-based, if I go down to one of these, so grab this text block, for example, I can also modify this with AI. So I can tell AI to elaborate on what's here. I can tell it to simplify what's here, whether you added the text or it was just from the AI in the first place. You can elaborate and adjust those. You can also transform it into any one of those other formats. So you can turn it into an analogy or a question based on that text or a set of steps. So really heavy on the sort of quick AI text stuff that you can do there as well. Also, if you happen to have any of our other products as part of this, you've got, again, obviously Asset Library was there. You can access that pretty easily. If you've got our gamification tools, you can add a game within the course here. If you've got our VR, you can add VR. You can also embed your own HTML stuff if you want to. But essentially, you can really quickly put together a course with a lot of different options, different visuals, different elements as you go through. This is actually a game sitting within here, so a trivia game. I won't go through all the way. And depending on what you've got, you can move these things around. So I've got questions throughout, all that sort of stuff. Once it's all set up and created, you can also change the appearance. So they've got a bunch of built-in themes. It'll just quickly update the whole course to whatever you like, any one of these, and it'll change the whole course in style for you. You can also create your own theme. You can see we had an example there for Suncorp example, just for some colors that most people sort of recognize there. You can set up your own with your own colors. You pick what color the headings and the text and the background will be. And then you can set that to all your courses. So any little ones that you make quickly, you can add those in and recreate that for other courses as well. Lastly, if I go back to my module, I mentioned there's translation options. I've got a number, obviously this example's gone through the ringer. I've got all these different languages here. I can add a new one whenever I want. I want to go in here and say, where's one I haven't ticked yet? Say I need Korean on here. Tick that box. It'll start updating, and usually by the time I finish explaining this, it'll be already updated and it'll sit there. If I hit translate now, you can have any number of languages there. Once it's done, you'll have your little option here to change it to that language. So now it's all in Korean. The really cool part here is if you give it enough time, it'll actually translate the audio and the video talking into that language if that's one of the ones that has that option. So each language will tell you if it's going to change text, captions, voiceover, and also what voices are available. So for example, if I go back here to Korean, which I just added, you can see it'll do closed captions. So all the captions will change. The voiceover itself will change, but it's only got a female voice for Korean. So you just got to keep that in mind with these little tags. Some languages will only do captions and not voiceover, depending on what they are, but they've got a huge list of languages as well. And you see it's already just did that translation on the fly really quickly for you. I don't know if it'll let me actually change him quickly enough. I've got my other ones there, but you can really quickly change it. It also changes the language.
Sicherheitsmaßnahmen, die auf große Unternehmen zugeschnitten sind.
Depending on what you need. And you can add and remove those. If you make any updates to your course later on, go back here, you can then just hit translate again and it'll just refresh all those languages for you and done. The last little bit to go through as well, when you're publishing your course, it'll actually create a link back to Microbuilder here so that the course you've put up in your LMS directly links to this. So if you come back in, make some changes and republish it, it will update it for you straight up into the LMS again. So it'll point that back through for you. It'll also give you a side-by-side of the current live one in the LMS, so you can see what text is there, what information's there, and as you make changes, you can see the difference and compare them as well. So it saves that sort of process of downloading, uploading. If you've got an arduous LMS setup process for courses, it takes all that away as well. So it's really handy. That's probably most. Our little guy's here. He's done now. We can see that new one. Let me play. He says he's done, but he doesn't want to play. Here we go. That might not be quite there yet. But essentially, yeah, we'll have that through and have that done. As part of our bundles and everything, you usually have the AI toolkit, which includes some of these AI tools as well. So for this video one, for example, you can create these completely separately from Microbuilder, download them and edit them in your own video editing tool, or use them for anything. You can put them in Lectora if you want, you can put them in PowerPoint, you can make them for any sort of presentation you want. It's not just tied to this product, but that's where these sort of options live. Yeah, that's Microbuilder in a quick little demo. Nice and quick one. You can get a lot of stuff done really easily, really quickly with that as well. Anyone have any questions on Microbuilder? It's a super quick run through. Everyone's okay?
Sorry.
All good. That's okay. Yeah, thought we'd show that. We'll show it again on the next week's one if you think anyone would be interested in checking that out. And we can also do demos for any of this stuff for anyone at any point. If you need one, just let us know. We can show you team. We can show whoever needs to have a look.
And also available is you can do a trial of Microbuilder also for those that already have a login to the studio. You just go in and click on the trial button. Otherwise, we can set it up for you if you want to shoot it through. It gets 30 days, I think it is, to do the trial.
Yeah. Well, good. Thanks everyone for staying on, having a look. Yeah. Let us know anything you need, any support stuff. Always happy to incorporate those into these sessions. And yeah, any demos you need for anything else, let us know as well. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you.
Good.
Thanks
everyone.
Thanks, guys. Right.
Cheers.
See you. Bye.
See you.